Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, present and those who are live streaming this evening. Thank you. And I'm going to call the meeting to order. Be noted there are 4 councilmen present with Bobby Watson with an excused absence, so we have a quorum. This evening, the invocation is going to be by John Wilmy. He's with the Good Samaritan. John, if you'll come up and give us our invocation. Thank you very much for doing this for us.
All right, thank you. Well, let's pray. Father, I am grateful. I'm grateful for everybody at the table in front of me, whether elected or hired staff, that shows up to care. Thank you for the common denominator of everybody in this room, that they care. We care about our community. We care about our neighbors. And we care about what will move us forward as a community. So thank you for that thing that unites us. And now, as we go through this meeting, we pray that your fruit would be among us, your love, your joy, your peace, your patience, your kindness, your goodness, your faithfulness, your gentleness, and your self-control. As we conduct ourselves, as we move with discernment, and as we make decisions that are important for everyone around us, for our neighbors. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. We'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Amen.
Employee recognition.
Yes, Mayor, it gives me pleasure this evening to recognize, to share with you 3 employee recognitions. First off, I failed at the last council meeting to recognize our finance department, Laura Hollenbeck, and all of the finance department employees for their work on the budget this past year. They, for the 5th year in a row, we have been awarded the Government Finance Officers of the Association award for our budget. Our budget has really developed over the last 5 or 6 years. It's a very high quality document. Again, it's been recognized by the National Association of Accountants. I wanted to recognize her and her staff. I know she's not here tonight, but I know she is watching the meeting. So Laura and her staff should be congratulated. Second, I wanted to share with you a compliment I got from a local citizen. Melissa Warwick. I think some of you know Melissa. She's the assistant district attorney. And she wanted to recognize one of our police officers. So she said, I wanted to contact you all to compliment Officer Luke Smith on his outstanding work on 2 dangerous offenders in Fredericksburg. Officer Smith was instrumental in the felony indictment of the Jeremiah Morton stalking case and did an excellent job putting this case together. He went above and beyond in the Huntley Donsler case by working late and on his day off to ensure a potentially violent offender was arrested. Because of his hard work, we were able to get Donsler to plead guilty to a felony charge. It is always great to work with such a dedicated officer, and I can't thank him enough for all of his efforts. Again, this is Officer Luke Smith, so we wanted to recognize him. And finally, last but not least, I think you all know we're in the middle of our street paving project this summer, and we received several positive compliments from local citizens on our street department, the great work that they've done on the street paving this year. And this is from an anonymous lady who happened to call our switchboard. She wanted to give a compliment to the 2 workers that paved Tanglewood Street yesterday. She did not know the employees' names, but she wanted to call and let us know that they did it very quickly and an all-around awesome job. So again, just wanted to share those recognitions with the council and the community tonight. We can continue to get a lot of positive praise and appreciation from our citizens for the great work that our employees perform. So Mayor and Council, that's all I have for this evening.
Okay, thank you very much, Ken. We'll move on to public comment. We have 4 people who have signed up for that. Kimberly Lambs, you would be first, and then Tom Marshall. if you'll come up and give us your name and if you're a city resident, and then at 3 minutes and at 1 minute, you will hear this sound. And then you'll have 1 minute left. Okay, Kimberly?
Hi, my name is Kimberly, and I do live in town. Okay. The most difficult subjects can be explained to the most slow-witted man if he has not formed any idea of them already. But the simplest thing cannot be made clear to the most intelligent man if he is firmly persuaded that he knows already, without a shadow of a doubt, what is laid before him. Leo Tolstoy. Okay, I want to pass this out to you guys.
Sure, please.
Yeah.
All right, I'm passing out the most recent VAERS data to you guys, and I've got to say, it's pretty alarming. Starting with the 10,991 deaths, or maybe the 30,781 hospitalizations, maybe the 8,832 life-threatening events, 9,274 people disabled, 3,906 people had a heart attack, and I know that there was a recent school bus crash in town, and it was reported that the driver had a heart attack, and I know that there were children on the bus, and I also know that the school was really trying to get as many people that wanted to take the shot as possible to take it. And I'm wondering if this guy did and had a heart attack with children on the bus and died. At the end of the day, whether you think it's safe or not, things are happening to people. And as the weeks pass, these numbers continue to grow. And it's really scary. There's also 1,073 miscarriages on that list. I just want you to ask yourselves for a minute, if the Johnson & Johnson shot was shut down due to 6 people getting blood clots, then what's going on with this data? And how can we be expected to believe a narrative coming from the media or even from Washington? I'm not here because I want to argue with you guys. I'm here out of genuine concern from my heart for my fellow community members. I'm really worried about the state of this country, and I'm really worried for this community. Should you keep having the mentality that it's a good idea to follow orders that are coming from the top down? I would like you guys to pin this VAERS sheet up in your office, and I want you to look at it every day. And when the day comes very soon, when Jane Pope calls and tries to put fear into your souls again because of the Delta variant, the Lambda variant, the Alpha or the Omega variant, look at this data. I'm going to send you weekly updates. People can and should always have freedom of choice, but when vital information is not presented to them, they cannot make a free choice. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly. Okay, Tom Marshall, and the next speaker would be Mary Lee Marshall. Name and of your city residence, and
My name is Tom Marshall. I'm a resident of Fredericksburg. I finally got an answer to a question I've been looking for in reference to whether or not the city of Fredericksburg has any immunity from damages that may occur from the COVID vaccine. I'm glad to hear that, yes, we are immune, except in the case of willful misconduct. Now, there's one of those legal terms that's very clear and concise. Everybody knows exactly what it means. Yeah, it's a joke. To me, willful misconduct would be performing some kind of conduct, knowing that it's wrong, and continuing that conduct. Okay, up until this point, I don't know what is known. I want to get back to misconduct in a few minutes, in less than a few minutes. Our Texas Constitution specifies that any law that infringes on our constitutional rights is void. Article 1, Section 28, I believe it is. Read it. We don't need a judge's opinion on it. It is clear and concise. Any law that affects our constitutional rights is void. Governor Abbott, the minute that he tried to shut down a bar, advised people to not go to church, he nullified the 1975 Emergency Powers Act by doing that. I therefore contend that any directive related to COVID is also null and void. I'm hereby informing you, competent authority as one of your employers, that your conduct and directives related to COVID have been wrongful. To continue that conduct could very easily be considered wrongful misconduct. I believe that Gillespie County is known as having the highest percentage of millionaires per capita in the state. One of those people is all that it would take to get the ball rolling in the wrong direction. Rest assured, I hope that never happens. Please consider the facts. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, then we'll have, excuse me, Mary Lee, and then after that, we'll have Herman. Is it Connie Herman or Herman Connie? Connie Herman, thank you.
Okay, I am Mary Lee Marshall. I do live in the city. Someone on the city council at the last meeting said he thought the mask policy was still an important thing to do and save lives. Well, maybe it is, but it's quite a jump to order everybody to wear a mask. Like it or not, there are those who cannot wear them. And it is also our right to refuse to wear them. And there are others who know they're useless. Depriving someone of health care because they won't follow a census rule is contrary to the purpose of health care. But I suppose depriving a person of health care that is ordered by a doctor is okay. Well, maybe if it's not someone you know, or if it's not you. But if it had been you, how many people are you willing to cut off from health care? Is there a limit? What is the acceptable limit? Or maybe you think there are no people who don't tolerate masks. Maybe you think they're lying. Are the medical professionals that I have heard talk about this subject, are they lying? There are at least a dozen professionals on the internet who argue against masks. They have just as many or more letters after their name as you do. Governor Abbott is not a doctor, he's a lawyer and a politician. Jane Pope has a nursing degree, but she is now a bureaucrat. She is not a doctor, and she's certainly not my doctor. If I go to any pharmacy and buy a package of pills, it says, consult your doctor. Well, I consulted my doctor. My doctor said, you take vitamin C, K3, K2, D3, drink lots of water, get lots of rest. That sounds like common sense to me. The problem is it leaves out the government and the pharmaceutical companies and the insurance companies. And that's the problem for you and the county government and the state. It's a problem that Fauci has. It needs to stay your problem. Don't try to make it mine. It's not.
Thank you. Okay, Connie Herman. Connie, if you'll state your name and if you're a city resident or not.
I'm Connie Fain. I'm a resident of Gillespie County. But I do swim. And on a lighter note, don't close our pool down. I mean, you've had it for how many years? And to put a splash pad in would be wonderful. I think we need to think of more things for children to do in this town. I think that's a great idea, but don't close the pool down for the splash pad, because that pool really is something that the people that go there enjoy a lot. And there's people that have been going there for their whole lives. And it's something, if you can reconsider keeping that open, putting the splash pads around the areas that aren't used, I think it would be a wonderful thing. And that's all I'm asking you.
Thank you, Connie. Okay, those are the only individuals that had signed up during the public comment period. So moving on to agenda number 6, the consent agenda item. The following items may be acted upon in a single motion. No separate discussion or action on any of these items will be held unless pulled from the request, at the request of a member of the city council. A, consider the approval of city council minutes. I, July 1, 2021 workshop. II, July 6, 2021 workshop. III, July 6, 2021 regular meeting. B, consider the approval of hosting the Gillespie County Fair Parade on Main Street on Friday, August the 27th, 2021 at 10 a.m. And B, consider approval for the request from the Gillespie County 4-H Barbecue for the 2 street closures at North Crockett Street between West Schubert Street and West Travis Street, and West Schubert Street between North Crockett and North Adams on August 27th, 2021, beginning at 10 a.m. and ending at 1 p.m. Do any of these items need to be removed from the consent agenda? There being none, I will entertain a motion to approve.
Mayor, I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Have a motion by Tom.
Second.
Second by Kathy. Any further discussion? There being none, motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. I'm going to move agenda item 9B to the front. 9B being consider presentation and discussion of the proposed splash pad options at town pool. Andrea?
So at this time, okay, so we want to discuss some options for the splash pad being added to town pool. We can go to the next slide. So just to start with, Town Pool is a community park. It's one of the 9 city parks. It's approximately 1 acre. We have a swimming pool there and then the green space in the back. We have 3 options. We can leave the pool as it is and not add a splash pad there, possibly somewhere else. Next slide, please. We could also add a splash pad in the green space back behind Town Pool, or we can convert the existing Town Pool and baby pool into a splash pad. So first I'm going to go through the 3 options and what they include, and then we'll spend some time talking about some considerations at the end on the 3 options. So option 1 would be no changes. We have an existing pool that was built in 2012. We opened in 2013. It was built by a bond election, about $1.3 million. The pool ranges from 3 to 5 feet in depth. It does have a toddler pool that is separate. It's about 1 foot in depth. We have 1 slide. We added a basketball goal a few years ago, and we do require at least 1 head lifeguard, 2 lifeguards, and 1 cashier to open. Capacity of Town Pool now is 98 people. We have about 6,500 or 6,300 square feet of green space and then 4,500 square feet of seating area. Here are a couple of photos of the existing Town Pool and the toddler pool. What's nice about the toddler pool is that it does not require any lifeguards, but we do require adult supervision. Okay, option 2 would be to add the splash pad in the green space back behind town pool. So the proposed size would be about 3,200 square feet with 2,500 square feet of seating area. We would have 6 additional shaded umbrellas and 19 limestone blocks as a border. This would include 29 spray features. The existing fence would have to be moved to meet regulations on town pool and to provide access to the bathroom, so there wouldn't be fencing around part of the splash pad. We'd have to add a cabinet to house our pumps, and then the existing shade structure and light poles would remain. Estimated capacity of this option is 128 users. Okay, I'm going to let Caitlin talk about the next couple of slides.
So as she mentioned, number 2 is where the cabinet would be located. So that is on the property line close to. And then also 7 and 8 is the fencing changes she was mentioning. We are required by the state as well as just national guidelines for swimming pools to have high fencing when you do have a swimming pool. So we would have to have that fencing moved. So there is going to be a definite barrier between the swimming pool and the splash pad, since one would be feed and one not, just to make sure we're being really safe when we have a splash pad there. And then also we will have that shade structure that was there initially, which is number 10, and that will be used still only for the swimming pool. Next slide, please. And then here's just some rendering drawings of some of the features that would be located at the splash pad. I do want to say on the following slide, there is one large feature. So it is the fill and spill. So since we are putting this in addition to the swimming pool, there's going to be a lot of smaller features, and then there'll be one large feature just because of the splash zone area. We want to make sure that we're keeping all the water contained. And then another thing that I would like to mention is this is a touch to play splash pad. So this is activated by a button. So when it is in use, they will push the button and that will cause the water to go in the features. Whenever it's not being used, there is a timer that will shut it off, and the circulation system will just go in the 3,000 gallon holding tank. So essentially it's a small swimming pool underground.
You can go ahead and flip to the next couple. Okay. Option 3 would be to convert the existing town pool into a splash pad. And so this would be a 3,700 square foot splash pad with 5 umbrella areas, the existing 4,500 square foot of seating and the shade structures that are there now would remain. This one would have 40 spray features. The existing green space would also remain. That would give us flexibility in the future if we wanted to add or do anything else back there. We'll reuse the existing pump room, and this one has a capacity of 151. So again, I'm going to turn it over to Caitlin, and we're just going to kind of run through the next few slides. It shows the layouts and then some renderings, some new renderings we just got of this conversion.
So a little different from the first option. There is a definite difference between the toddler area and then we have a preteen teen area. When you start separating demographics, you have age appropriate features. People would have the option of whether or not they wanted their smaller child to be in what area. So in 4 and 3 in the toddler area, they would be reusing the existing bubblers that are in the current baby pool area, as well as the existing trench. There will be some slight modifications, but they will be using that design. And then 5 and 12 is the only decking that would be removed and then have to be replaced. That would be in order to tie in the two systems. Currently, our town pool and baby pool operate on separate circulating systems. This would be a joint system. So that would be the only decking. All other decking would remain. And then in 11, so that is the pump area. So as she mentioned, we would be able to utilize the main pool pump as well as the main pool filtration system. And then the baby pool pump would then be able to be a backup. So for instance, we had a freeze and we would be able to have that in back stock if we needed it, or if something happened to our part pool baby pump, we would have that as well. And then as I mentioned, for larger features, this would include 4 large features. So that is H, I, J, and M. So they're located in like the 4 directional points. And then there's some renderings on the future slides. And then for the baby pool, if we can go back one. Right there. So this is the toddler area. So just to mention a couple of the features, there would be some large aquatic life theme features in this toddler area. And so that would be B and C, so a dolphin and fish and different things like that for the younger kiddos. And then, so on this one, you can see, so the fill and spill is the feature that is included in both the smaller option as well as the larger option. And then that is located on the top left.
And then these next few slides are just some renderings of what it would look like if we had the conversion here. It shows the toddler area separate from the big kid area. We can just run through those. And you can see some of these larger features that Caitlin was mentioning that this one would have. The smaller version would have one of the large options. Okay, so now we want to get into the main part of the presentation, and that is why are we even coming to you with this option of converting town pool. And the main reason has to do with staffing. Right now, as I'm sure almost anybody and everybody in town knows, there's a struggle getting staff, and we're having that same struggle as well. The lifeguard trend across the nation is that you just don't have as many kids that are wanting to be lifeguards anymore. We're actually pretty fortunate is that we have been able to get some lifeguards, but we're struggling to keep them on staff. We get requests to keep the pools open longer, but we're struggling to even have them open 10 weeks out of the year. If we added a separate splash pad, one of the nice things about a splash pad is that you're not required to have lifeguards because there really is a very small risk of drowning. But we are going to have extended hours, so we're going to need extra staff to check the bathrooms. I have a feeling this is going to be a very popular location, so at peak times, we may have to have an attendant there to keep that 151 capacity at 151. So we are going to have to get some extra people outside of our current staff if we go with option 2. Pay is also increasing here locally. We went up from $8 to $11 a few years ago for a starting lifeguard. We've actually had some local establishments that hire lifeguards are now at $14 an hour. So we're probably going to need to go up again if we're going to be competitive. In addition, many of our lifeguards go out to the wineries on the weekends. They pay $17 an hour and get tips out there. So sometimes we can get them during the week, but we're losing them on the weekends. In addition, we have most of our guards are either in college or they are in extracurricular activities. Actually, 14 of the 17 current lifeguards we have are either in college or in some activity that affects their summer schedule. So we're actually looking at closing both swimming pools August 8th this year. If we're lucky, we'll get there. The problem is after that, we would love to keep Park Pool open, weekends only, but we're going to be down to 7 lifeguards, none of them head guards, and we have to have at least 6 just to open Park Pool. If we have less than 6, we have to start limiting capacity, which is an option. But Town Pool will definitely be closed on August 8th. So rather than extending hours and being open longer in August, the hottest time of the year, we're not going to be able to have that pool open other than the first week, which we hate. We don't want to do that. So what have we done to try to recruit lifeguards? We have reached out to the local schools, and that's everywhere from Harper to Stonewall to Schreiner University. We posted job postings anywhere you can think of. We've had people come to me and say, well, why don't you get teachers to do it? Or why don't you get older adults? So we tried. We did a campaign a few years ago and really tried to encourage seniors or older adults to get involved. Unfortunately, we did not get a single application. So it just didn't work out. And like I mentioned earlier, we did go up from $8 to $11 an hour. In addition, we also, just to mention, we do cover their certification pay, their uniform pay, their safety equipment, so it really doesn't cost them anything to start with the city. Something else that I mentioned at our last budget meeting is that the damage from the winter storm has caused the plaster to have issues at both our swimming pools. The cost to replaster town pool is just under $70,000. So if we don't have an answer yet on the insurance, we were hoping to have that before today. So if the insurance covers it and we go with option 1 or 2, no problem, we can just replaster the pools. If we go with option 3, and the insurance does cover it, we can actually take that $70,000 and put it towards something else at town pool. If the insurance does not cover it, it will have to be budgeted for. We also have routine maintenance of our sand filter media, which is $15,000. This will actually have to be done with any of the 3 options, so we've included that in this year's budget. And also just want to mention, sometimes people think the more better, but in this case, 2 sometimes isn't always better. We're currently spread very thin. We're having difficulty staffing what we have right now. So my concern is if we add a separate splash pad, we may not be able to get the extra staff for that either. We'll try, if that's the decision that's made, we'll do our best we can, but there is going to be continued struggles, I think. We have 2 certified pool operators right now, and so this facility will require a certified pool operator to check the chemicals. What we found are the main users of town pool are families with small children, because a lot of the families prefer to go to park pool because there's more variety there. We've got a diving well and deep end. We do have some older adults and teenagers that do use it, but not as many as the families with small kids. If we go with option 1 and 2, I do think we're going to continue to be limited on how much we can open town pool unless something changes, and I don't know if that means are we going to start paying our lifeguards a lot more than $11 an hour? Are we going to pay 14? Are we going to pay 18? Are we going to compete with the wineries to try to get 15-year-olds here? But what's reasonable and what's not reasonable? With option 2, the green space in the back would be eliminated. And then just as for informational purposes, town pool costs the city about $80,000. That doesn't, we make about $5,000 off the pool. So it overall cost $80,000. Splash pad costs about half that amount at $40,000. So if we have both facilities, it'll cost the city about $120,000, which we do know most city park facilities don't make money, but just as references. Town pool will continue to have entry fee unless council wants to change that, and then the splash pad will be free. So you'll have a facility you have to pay for next to a facility that's free. One of the challenges with that is we're not adding additional restrooms, so we're going to reuse the existing restrooms and move the fencing. So the restrooms are going to be outside the fenced-in town pool gate, but you're going to have people that are in town pool exit to get to the bathrooms and then go back in. So we would have to determine some type of wristband or system or something like that, which we could make that work. We do require even observers to pay to get in town pool right now, and that is because they also go in and use the bathrooms and use toilet paper and soap, and we have to clean after them. In this case, the restrooms are going to be free to splash pad users, but we're going to be telling town pool observers they still have to pay. So we may have to look at that and determine, are we going to continue to do that? Are we going to have different rules for different pools? And then we are going to have, there won't be fencing in option 2 around the splash pad. So we'll have some limestone blocks. So it will be easier for kids to kind of run out in between those. Now we could go back and add fencing. That's still an option if we wanted to. Just want to show you the attendance trends at town pool over the last 5 summers. So as you can see, our attendance has been going down. You have to pretty much throw out 2020 as a summer due to all the restrictions, and we were not open full time. This summer, we're on pace to meet or possibly exceed slightly the 2019 numbers. So we have seen a slight uptick this year in attendance. Typical year, we average about 39 people a day at town pool. This year, we're averaging about 59 to 60. And just as a comparison, town pool averages about 173 people right now per day. Their attendance numbers are anywhere from 10,000 to 12,500 per summer.
And just to show an example, in that picture, there was about 17 people as the bather load. That is an average day at Town Pool. We're open 6.5 hours, open at 1, close at 6:30, averaging 65 to 70 people. Just a breakdown, that's about 8 to 12 people per hour. Of course, some hours have a few more, some have a few less.
Okay, some other considerations. This year out at Town Pool, this is the first time we've had the Wellness Center start offering classes out there. So we have an additional 20 to 25 people that come out and use it in the mornings. So if option 2 is the decision and we keep Town Pool, there might be the option to include additional programs, and we could maybe try to encourage people to use Town Pool to expand its use into the mornings or weekends. If option 3 is chosen, the Wellness Center class could be moved to Park Pool. Town Pool is also more centrally located and closer than Park Pool for people that live in town. And then if we have option 2 and we have the pool and the splash pad, somebody that wants to visit both facilities at the same time would have that ability. They just have to pay to go into one. And then, as I mentioned before, probably the biggest plus on splash pads, and this is option 2 or 3 if we add the splash pad, is that we're not going to have to add lifeguards to our staff. Like I mentioned, I think during peak times of the year, we are going to need an attendant to kind of watch the capacity, and then we're also going to need staff to check the restrooms. We will be reusing most of the existing facilities, and I'll talk about that a little bit more here in just a minute. We're going to have a little bit more square footage of splash pad and 11 additional spray features for option 3. All of the green space remains. The fencing also stays in place. Even though the splash pad will be free, we'll keep the fencing in place, and that'll give us the option in the off-season to close it, especially with the increase in vandalism we've had over the last 18 months. We can reuse the existing pump room, so there won't be any new noise impact to the neighbors. We will have a separate toddler area, so if you have 1 or 2-year-old and you don't want them playing with the 10 and 12-year-olds, you'll have that option. One of the biggest benefits of a splash pad, and again, this is option 2 or 3, is that we can open it not only earlier in the year and stay open later, but it can also be open more hours every day. So that's really a big bonus, and we won't have to have staff there all the time. Of course, the annual loss for a splash pad will be about half that of Town Pool, and we won't charge an entry fee. A question came up is that because Town Pool was originally funded through a bond election, can we even convert it to a splash pad? We did check with bond counsel, and since the Morning Rotary Club will not be receiving any benefit from this, they said there's no problem since they'll be funding this fully by their donation. As I mentioned just a minute ago, I want to just go over kind of what we would keep from the original bond election. Of course, with option 1, everything would stay the same. Option 2, we would just be losing the green space and rearranging the fencing. And then option 3, we're going to remove some of the decking. The deep end of the pool would be replaced with the storage tank, and it would be brought up to ground level. The one pump that we're removing, we would reuse, as Caitlin mentioned, out at Park Pool, but everything else would remain. And then just an idea on the schedule, I would think if we wanted to go with option 2 or 3 and add the splash pad and be open next year in April at Town Pool, we would probably want a decision at least by November 1st. If we could get it in September or October, that'd even be better. Just everything seems to be delayed and running behind schedule right now. So the sooner a decision is made, the better chance we'll have to be open by April of next year. I was asked if we were going to put out a survey on this, and my only concern with putting a survey out is I'd want to think about, the best way to do that. I wouldn't want to just put out something that has option 1, 2, and 3 and people not know why we're even telling them we want to convert Town Pool or that's even an option. So since this presentation is being recorded, if we can put out a press release asking people to watch the presentation and then send me an email or call me with any comments, and I can get those all back to council and summarize them. That's another option. And I would like to mention that we're open to any of these options. We'll do the best we can if y'all decide to go with option 2 and keep the splash pad separate. I think a splash pad is needed here, and it could be a great addition to the Parks Department. I just want to be realistic in the future that if we continue to struggle with keeping guards, there may be a time when Town Pool is open even less than it is right now. So at this time, I'd like to ask Craftsman if they have any comments, and then offer Morning Rotary the opportunity as well. You can come, yeah.
you would state your name and et cetera.
My name's Corey Soderberg from Craftsman. We were involved in the Old Fair Park project, and I want to thank you all for the opportunity to be here and chat this evening. Andrea has done a wonderful job of explaining the pros and cons of all the different scenarios. As she mentioned, a splash pad would be a great addition to the city. I believe it is the #1 requested amenity in the Parks and Recreation field across the nation at this point. I don't really have a preference, in my personal opinion, in being in splash pad business for 20 years. Which of these is the best solution? It really has to be y'all's decision for the community, for Andrea and her staff, and that's the decision that has to be made. We do believe that the design that has been put in place in both scenarios for either in the addition out in the green space or taking the place of the actual pool, all of the existing facility that's there has been taken into consideration and how to utilize that the best that can be. So I believe that the Aquatics and Parks Department and Morning Rotary have done a lot of work here and put in a lot of time and effort, and have got a great concept here to bring another amenity in. So if there's no other comments.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mark, you want to? And Mark, if you don't mind, we're going to limit you to 3 minutes.
Start it rolling. I'm Mark Bennett. I'm representing the Morning Rotary Club. The splash pad we feel as a club and as a community is really needed, and I've worked with Andrea, on all of our playground and all of the facilities that we've been working to build for the youth of our community, and we really feel like this is the next step and the next thing that this community really needs, and we are trying to get good facilities built for the youth of this community, and we feel this is the next thing to do. We don't have a preference on either plan. We're going to fundraise and we're going to build whatever the leadership of this community decides to do. The funding and the fundraising is going to be very similar for either Plan 2 or Plan 3. It's not going to be that much different, and we will mount a campaign to raise funds and to build a splash park for whatever you guys decide to do. And I'll leave it at that, unless you have any questions for me.
I do have a question. What would be if council or the citizens move forward, how long would it take to gather your funds? And I know that's a tough question.
It is
6 months, a year? Or?
No, I think we can pull funds together in 6 months.
Okay.
We can pull funds together in 6 months. I really do believe that.
So the project really couldn't start until your funds were secured?
Yes,
Okay.
we can. We're ready to move on it.
Okay, but you would start that process of collecting the funds?
Yes, sir. Just
Okay.
give me the word. We'll get going.
And Mark, the construction schedule, let's say it was the big one, what was the timeline for that?
Right. We have about 18 weeks in there. That's kind of worst case scenario.
Okay. So 18 plus 6 months.
Give me the word. I'll raise the money.
I thought you were just going to write a check.
Personally.
Cash it on Tuesday. Thank you, Mark.
Okay, that's all we've got. If y'all have any questions now or discussion, we'll do the best we can to answer them.
Questions? I'll start with Kathy, your lady on board.
Just a question about the numbers. Clearly from the numbers you showed, attendance at the town pool has been going down each year. Never mind last year.
Yes, right.
What about park pool? What do those numbers look like over the last 4 or 5 years?
I've got those for you. Just a page. So in 2017, there were 12,000. No. So one of the things we did a couple of years ago is we actually started closing Park Pool one day a week and having Town Pool open on that day to try to get more people over to use Town Pool.
And did that work?
Yeah, it's helped some. Tuesday is by far the biggest day of the week at Town Pool.
Thanks. I may have more.
Okay, you're welcome.
Tom?
I think splash pads are probably a thing that's, a thing of the future. I believe that it would be good for the community. I do believe, my personal opinion is that if we decide to go down this path, the citizens of this community are the ones that are going to make this decision. And I think we put it out there. Do you want option 1, 2, or 3? I think with the time frame that you've given us and the amount of time it's going to take Mark to write his check, that we could probably we should probably have some kind of a referendum and let the people that approved the pool bonds in 2018 tell us what they want to do, and that would be a good educational process for our community about what's happened with the pool. The advantages of a splash pad. So I applaud Rotary for what they have done in our community. We know we wouldn't be where we are today if it wasn't for you. So I thank you for everything that you do, you have done, and you will do in the future, because I don't think you're anywhere close to being finished.
Jerry?
Well, I agree with I agree with Tom on that too. Man, the Rotary Club has done fantastic on fundraising. I need to get you on marketplace redevelopment. Anyway, no, when I start looking at it, I try and stop by the pool and go in and see who's there. And I talk to people that are at the pool, and the ones that I did talk to say either myself or my husband bring the grandkids over there. They love the town pool. I'd like the option 2. I would think if we need to have more room or space there, let's close that street behind it and take it, as far as we can. I think that keeping the fence up is the best thing you can do. I think sure as God made little green apples, there's going to be somebody that's going to be a real, whatever you want to call them, and they're going to mess something up. I think you need to keep a fence there. I don't think you can just open it up and let people run in and out. But, no, I like the option 2. I would like to see the pool stay because, like I said, there's a lot of people in town too that don't have swimming pools and they don't want to drive all the way out to the park in order to go swimming. And the town pool is just real convenient. We could fence off town pool and kind of separate that in the splash pad. When the pool is closed, and then the splash pad can still be usable. That's my thinking on it.
Thank you, Jerry. I've got a couple of comments. I've visited with a number of people, and as a kid growing up about a block away, we get there at 1 o'clock, not leave until 7 o'clock. So it was my mother and dad's daycare center for us. 30, 40 bicycles parked there, kids walking to the pool. I drive by the pool quite often, and I don't see bicycles there anymore, and I haven't seen any kids walking, so I agree most kids are being dropped off in today's environment. When this committee was formed at 33, I believe was correct, I pushed a couple of the members for a splash pad then, and I'm certainly in favor of a splash pad now. Looking into the future for splash pads and not knowing the crystal ball, my concern would be with continuing issue with help, getting lifeguards. I don't have an issue with the loss of the pool because you know what, that's what parks do. They provide entertainment and places for the citizens to go as well as visitors. So I'm in favor of a splash pad. If I personally had to choose one today, I would choose go give it the full blown splash pad. But I agree with Tom. I think it's a community decision to be made as to what they might want to do. But splash pad in one form or fashion is certainly something I would certainly hope the community would entertain. So with that being said, Kathy, you said you may have another question or so.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment, or maybe ask a question. If we did go with option 2, can we use all the same equipment that we have now, like you're suggesting with option 3?
Right, so almost everything will be reused pretty much with option 2. Just the green space is going to go away, and the fencing will be have to be rearranged. Yeah, so pretty much everything would be reused on that. Now, we would have the pump room, we would have to have a separate pump room, and it'd have to be outside. And Craftsman did look into trying to put the pumps in the system in our pump room, but it wasn't going to work. So they would have to put an additional pump room outside and then try to insulate it as well as possible so it didn't have too much of a noise impact on the neighbors, but still allow enough airflow through there.
Do you know if other cities similar to ours is having the same situation we are with people using these pools less and less, or do you have any statistics on that?
I don't have statistics on that here locally. We'd have to try to find a city kind of our same size that has 2 swimming pools to really try to get a good comparison to whether or not they're having a decrease in numbers. To be honest, most parks and outdoor activities this year, we're seeing an increase in everything across the board. Everybody's just more active, but I could try to check into that.
This is a tricky decision because I remember very well what happened when the decision was made not to close Town Pool and to keep it open and redo it. It was a fairly divisive time in our city. I guess overall, I agree with you, Charlie. I think if we're going to do this, we do it completely with a splash pad. We have the pool out at the park. It's getting good use out there. So I don't know if we're going to have another survey of folks, but my position would be the same as yours, Mayor.
Okay. I do have a question. If we're not able to keep, let's say we go with the combination, and we can't open the pool because we don't have the lifeguards there, can the splash pad still be open at that time if the pool can't be open?
Sure, I think we could probably come back and build a splash pad at that point.
No, I mean, let's say you have the combination splash pad in the pool, but you can't get the lifeguard situation lined up, so you can't open the pool because you don't have the lifeguards.
Right.
Would the splash pad be open?
Yes.
It would be open, so it could be open 7 days, whatever.
Right.
Okay. So the staffing there would not just be a person to
Right, so
kind of keep eye on things.
What we're looking at is if we do option 2 and Town Pool is open, we're gonna have that staff will help monitor, clean the bathrooms for the splash pad. But if Town Pool, if we can't open it or get that staff, we can still keep the splash pad open, but we'll have to find somebody to go over there during peak times and to check the bathrooms. But that won't be as difficult as trying to staff Town Pool because it won't be a lifeguard requirement.
Okay.
Andrew, I've asked most of my questions the last couple of weeks, but I just thought of one additional question I had. It's been a year or two since I've been in the restrooms over there, but if those restrooms were designed for just the pool and the capacity of the pool, and now we add another facility there that has a capacity of 128 plus their parents, are we going to have some crowding problems in those restrooms over there? And I just thought about that because I thought the restrooms were just designed for the pool, and now we're going to do a dual facility. I'm kind of concerned it may get real crowded in those restrooms. No?
Right, and do you have anything to comment on this one? So, like for special events, what do we require, 50? For bathrooms, yeah. One stall per 50 people, one per 100. So we would have enough to meet our special events. But I do think if you've ever been in a swimming pool bathroom, they get very messy very quickly, especially when it's a bunch of kids. So there could be issues, I think, maybe not with overcrowding, but with making a lot bigger messes faster.
I will just add to that because right now the lifeguards, that's part of their duties when they're off shift. That is one of their requirements, that they have to walk around the entire facility, pick up trash, clean up restrooms, and they do get used quite heavily, even at a facility like Town Pool that's not used as much. Just restroom facilities, definitely public restrooms get very messy very quickly. So that is something when we're looking at having an attendant over there, if the swimming pool isn't open, that this person will probably be very busy just with the amount of trash and cleaning up the facility. Right now, I hired 20 to 22 seasonal part-time staff. So if we did add, more attendance to this, this is definitely a huge number that for a town our size, and just the amount of opportunities that these kids have is what I am constantly competing with. But that is just the number, so you are aware that it's a fairly large number that we have to hire each summer.
So I've heard a couple of council members say that you want additional citizen input. So if that's the case, we need to, I think, continue to have some discussion on what do you mean by community input. I think there's three options when you talk about community input. One is, well, actually four. We can continue with public hearings and public meetings. You can get public input through continued public meetings like this. A second would be to do an informal survey. We could run it in the newspaper, we could have it online, but we could do an informal survey of the public. A third option would be to do a scientific poll of the citizens here. We'd hire a polling person to come in. It's probably be $8,000 probably to do a formal scientific poll. And the last option, which I think Councilman Musselman mentioned, was an actual referendum, which would be on the November ballot. And that would mean that there would be no decision made until November. The cost of having an election in November would be about, what, 10,000?
Yes.
About 10,000.
And we'll have to call it early August.
So we need some sort of discussion, Mayor, some continued discussion. Is this council still wanting to have some more public input? If so, which option do you want to pursue?
Again, I'm going to jump in right quick on this one. What about public forums like we did with the STRs? We'll have a great presentation like this, have a minimum of 2, see what kind of turnout, get it publicized in the newspaper. Got that, Sam? And then, radio and whatnot, and have public forums, because again, when people hear about you're going to do this town pool, their knee-jerk reaction is getting rid of the pool. Well, maybe the citizens will want that, maybe they don't want it, maybe they want something in between. So I think a public forum would certainly give us a good direction on that, and then hopefully have them prior to August. So if council's direction is to put it on a ballot, then we put it on a ballot in August. That's my comment. Tom?
I think that's a good idea, Charlie. I mean, I don't believe we need to do something to publicize this process and this agenda item, because I remember very distinctly the Save Town Pool mantra that I heard in 2011 and 2012. It became a political issue, and people spoke. One thing we also got to remember is that the $1.3 million did not cover the cost of the pools. There was another $800,000 that came out of city funds on that. So I think that, the people approved the bonds. It's their pool. And if we're moving towards splash pads, which I think that most cities are, I think most recreation is, then I think the people will support us on that. But I do believe we need to give them the opportunity to say, this is what we want.
Okay, so Councilman, and you supported what the mayor indicated we'll have some public forums. Is that what you're going to do?
Yes.
Okay.
I'd say public forums, and then make it, then I'd say, I mean, even if we have an election, you know, it costs us, what, $10,000? $10,000 for democracy. I mean, we're spending their money. Every decision we make, we're spending the taxpayers' money.
I would think that if we had a referendum, you know, the problem is, it's like the problem with a survey, that if you don't get the correct information into the ears of the people who are going to vote on this, then the vote isn't representative necessarily of the facts and what's being presented. So maybe a public forum is the best way to go. That way they show their real interest by attending, and then they hear the real facts as we've heard them tonight. And they can respond either by sending us a note or standing up and speaking. But, you know, I hate for any major decision to be made when people don't have all the facts. And it's often apparent when you go to a referendum or in a survey that the survey doesn't ask the right questions. The referendum asks one question: do you want it? Don't you? Do you not want it?
Well, I think this referendum there would be actually 3 questions. And the 3 questions would be, do you want to keep Town Pool the way it is? The second option would be, do you want to keep Town Pool and add a splash pad? And the third option would be, do you want to convert Town Pool into a splash pad? And I believe that the idea would be, you'd have to go out and present information. Okay? I remember the pool bond. We had city officials that went out to the Rotary clubs, and they went out to all the service organizations in town, and they put the facts before them and said, this is what the bond is going to do. Here are the options that are going to be before you as a voter, and you can vote to keep everything the same, or you can vote for this, or you can vote for this, but we're giving you the option on how we're going to spend your money.
For $10,000, why don't we just get a letter and have those 3 options on there, put it with their electric bill, and send it to them, self-addressed, stamped envelope, and send it back to the city, and it's going to be a lot cheaper than $10,000.
Well, the other thing to keep in mind, I don't think we're going to have enough time to do both a public forum and and then call a referendum, because the deadline for a referendum is what? And this is July 19th. By the time we publicize public forums and put them together, that's going to be cutting it pretty close.
Cut it close.
Okay, so we could call a referendum on August 16th and try to have public.
Well, I think we should, you know, I know that sounds like it's hurried, but I'm thinking it's a month, 30 days. I'm not saying you should have one this week, but you could have one. Got the paper here, we can get it out there. Have one next week, you know, put pressure on staff. Have one next week, see what the turnout is. Have one the following week, and we'll be in that timeline. And you can call a special meeting to see if the council wants to move forward based on what we heard from the forums. I don't like talking first, but I do have a real passion for splash pads, so I apologize, council. Anyone else?
Okay, we'll move forward with some public forums, and then August 16th happens to be a regular council meeting anyway, so we will have on the agenda an item to call a referendum if you want to for the November elections, okay?
But we would have had the hearings before that, the public comment periods before that.
The public input session.
Public input session.
Yeah, it won't be council meetings, it'll be probably at Pioneer Pavilion or somewhere else, you know.
And so we could make the decision on August 16th not to go for a referendum.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Because we've gotten enough information.
It'll be up to y'all whether you even want it on the agenda for that evening, and if so.
And I'm putting a lot of pressure on you, but I would prefer to have those in the evening when people can be off of work.
Sure, absolutely. We'll figure it out.
Thank you for your presentation. Thank you, Rotary Club, for all you do for the I call them rug rats. Little ones, big ones, tall ones. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to item number 7A, the whole. Okay, I'll give you guys a second to get out. I'm sorry. Quietly. Okay, moving on to item 7A, public hearings. 7A, hold a public hearing to receive citizens' comments for or against two requests by Mark Sparrow, Z 2110 for the following. I, a land use change from medium density MDR to high density residential HDR on property located at US Highway 87 South and south of Friendship Lane on a 10.143 acre tract of the proposed Friendship Oaks subdivision. Double I, a land use change from medium density residential MDR to low density residential LDR on property located east of US 87 South and south Friendship Lane on a .03 acre tract on the proposed Friendship Oaks subdivision. Triple I, a land use change from low density residential LDR to high density residential HDR on property located on east of US Highway 87 South and south of Friendship Lane on a 4.76 acre tract of proposed Friendship Oaks subdivision. I-5, I-4, a land use change from low density residential LDR on high density residential HDR on property located approximately 1,600 feet east of the intersection at Friendship Lane and US 87 Lane on a 5.986 acre tract of land on the proposed Friendship Oaks subdivisions. I'll entertain a motion to go out of a regular session into public hearing.
So moved.
Have a motion by Tom, second by Kathy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Is there anyone here who would like to speak for or against this four items?
I move we go out of public session back in the regular.
Second.
Got a motion by Jerry and a second by Kathy to go from public to regular. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving on to 7B. Hold a public hearing to receive, let me take a sip of water here. Thank you all. Hold a public hearing to receive citizen comments for or against two requests by Mark Sparrow, Z 2110 for the following. I, a zoning change from R2 mixed residential to R3 multifamily residential property located on US 87 South in the South Friendship Lane on a 10.143 acre tract of the proposed Friendship Oaks subdivision. Double I, a zoning change from R2 mixed residential to R1A single family residential small lot on property located east of US 87 South and South Friendship Lane on a 0.3 acre tract of the proposed Friendship Oaks subdivision. Triple I, a zoning change from R1A single-family residential small lot to R3 multifamily residential on a property located east of US 87 South and south of Friendship Lane on a 4.76 acre tract of land of the proposed Friendship Oaks subdivision. Four I's, a zoning change from R1A single-family residential small lot to R3 multifamily residential on a property located approximately 1,600 feet east of the intersection of Friendship Lane and US 87 Lane on a 5.986 acre tract of the proposed Friendship Oaks subdivision. I'll entertain a motion, go from regular to public.
So moved.
Motion by Kathy, second by Tom. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Anyone here would like to speak to that, for or against?
Move we go out of public hearing back in regular session.
Have a motion by Tom
Second.
and a second by Jerry to go from public to regular. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. C. Item C, hold a public hearing to receive comments for or against the proposed historic guidelines and standards. I have a motion to go from regular to to public.
I move we go out of regular back into public.
I have a motion by Jerry, second by Kathy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is there anyone here who would like to speak to that? If you'll state your name and if you're a city resident or not, please.
Thank you. I'm Eric Hammerson. I do reside in the city. I would like to commend Anna Hudson for her diligence and hard effort in moving this initiative forward. The concern that I have has to do with the process that gets us to today. On the 16th of July, 2019, an RFQ was issued to hire a historic preservation consulting firm to update the existing 1997 design guidelines for the city of Fredericksburg. If you look on page 55, it talks about what the purpose behind that was. And this is consistent, and I would respectfully remind the city council of the language of the wording of that 1997 ordinance and the current city ordinance, chapter 23, section 3, dated 17 March 2021, as posted on the website. Design guidelines for the city of Fredericksburg. Written guidelines adopted by the city council in 1997 as the same may be amended from time to time as a reference and guide to provide information on appropriate methods for rehabilitation and restoration of historic resources. That, however, is not what you're being presented for consideration this evening. Rather than amending the previous guidelines for use as a reference and guide, what you're seeing instead is a proposal that you adopt the City of Fredericksburg Historic Design Guidelines and Standards. Rather than serving as a reference guide to provide information, this document includes more than 290 uses of the word required, requires, requirement, etc. There's no authorization in the city ordinance for the HRB to present for adoption a set of standards. By comparison, the current design guidelines do not use the words require, requires, required, requirement, or requirements even once. Going from 0 to 297 uses these words is not an amendment or an update to a reference and a guide. It's a dramatic change to what's allowed. I've been unable to find where the city council changed the city ordinance in 2018, nor where they agreed that the city ordinance would not continue to apply. In your next item, you're being asked to retroactively authorize that change. In my experience in the government, first you change the law, and then you spend the money, not the other way around. You don't spend the money and then go back and say, oh, we'll change the law to reflect the fact that we spent the money. I would respectfully ask council, what's the legal authority to ignore the current existing city ordinance from 2018 to the present? And what would be the legal and financial consequences to the city and the financial consequences to the taxpayers, including those living outside this historic district, should some property owner successfully sue the city? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments on this one? If not, I'll entertain a motion to go out of public, get back to regular.
So moved.
Have a motion by Tom and a second by Jerry. Any further discussion? There none being, all those in favor?
Aye.
Going on to 7D, hold a public hearing to receive citizens' comments for or against the amendments to Article 3, Historic Preservation of Chapter 23, Planning of the Code of Ordinances. I'll entertain a motion to go to public from regular. Have a motion by Jerry. Second by Tom. All those in favor? Aye. Anyone here would like to speak to item 7D?
I move we go out of public back in regular session.
We have a motion by Jerry
Second.
and a second by Kathy to go from public to regular. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Okay, moving on then to 8A. consider the approval of ordinance 2021-14 adopting a change in the comprehensive plan of the city of Fredericksburg, specifically in the land use map in the comprehensive plan as to a portion of the Friendship Oaks subdivision located to the south of Friendship Lane and east of US 87, situated in the city of Fredericksburg, Texas, changing portions of said property from medium-density residential, MDR, to low-density residential, LDR, for approximately 0.3 acres, from the medium-density residential, MDR, to high-density residential, HDR, for approximately 10.143 acres, from low-density residential, LDR, to high-density residential, HDR, for approximately 4.46 acres, and from low-density residential, LDR, to high-density residential, HDR, for approximately 5.986 acres, providing that the change become part of the comprehensive plan and providing for the effective date. Z2110, first of two readings. The city council may waive the second reading. Jason?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, Council. If you can bring up my slideshow, Eric, that'd be great. So there's a couple items before you tonight. I'm going to speak on the land use change as first, but I will reference the zoning changes because those are what's initiating the change on the land use. So if you can see here, hopefully you can see this image. If I need to blow this up, I can. This is the subject property. It is broken up. So where the mouse is, this is 5.986 acres. They are looking from a change of low density residential to high. There's a secondary area. It's roughly 4.46 acres. That is.
Jason?
Yeah.
Is there a mouse there? I don't see it.
Let me try something else. Can you see this mouse now? Okay. I picked that one just for you, Charlie, so. So here on this image, like I said, this is the 5 acres up here. This is a 4 acres. Both of these are medium or low density. Request here, this is a proposed high-density residential, approximately 10 acres, from low-density or medium-density residential to high, and then there is a small portion here, approximately 0.3 acres, and that would go from the medium-density residential to low-density residential. What the applicant is looking at doing is modifying the zoning changes to go to a multifamily product along this area. This curved line that you see is a proposed road, so anything to the west of that line would be any issues with the request. We felt all of those were compatible with what's going on in the area. High density residential in this piece here, approximately representing 14 acres, backs up to city limit line. There's some commercial area ultimately unzoned, and then they are also just south of commercial zoning, which is C1.5. You can see that in that area as well. The only concern that we had at P&Z was the 0.5 acres or 5 acres, 0.96. Because of its location to Friendship Lane and given the density and the height concerns in the area, staff wasn't comfortable recommending a change on that. And so when people
of their proposal? Because I think there's a second phase that goes in and borders the Seco development.
Yes, yes.
I believe that we do need to have the traffic impact study. The amount of traffic that is increasing on Friendship Lane, every day. So, was there anything in there? I know that we're just talking about land use changes and zoning changes today. So have they started anything about a traffic impact, or have they even started talking about how many apartment buildings? Are you going to talk about that today? Or is that something for the future about how many buildings are going in, what kind of density we're looking at?
Well, density is going to be based on the zoning code for the R3. So any TIS is going to be based on that max build out. So we won't, whether they come to with a plan showing a less dense build than what they could do, our TIS is generally look at the max structure. Conversations, the applicant has been meeting with engineering to discuss those changes. At this point, engineering didn't indicate to me that there was going to be any major changes.
Okay, so no changes to Friendship Lane?
There may be some minor mitigation, whether it's right in, right out, or decel, but at this point, it's pretty standard.
No center turn lanes or anything like that?
I don't believe at this time, yes, sir. I know their TIS is kind of in conjunction with a couple of those, so I can, if we want to discuss that at the second reading, I can prepare a separate engineering report that goes into all of the mitigation issues that we would be considering.
So a question I have is, since we're having all of this development on East Friendship Lane at this time, is there any coordination or communication by the developers of the different tracks on Friendship of doing a joint traffic impact analysis? Or is that just not done? Or
there's been some coordination between property owners in the various ways that they meet with each other. I don't think that there's been one organized, concerted effort to tackle this in its a holistic view.
Right.
There is some conversations going about that joint access between this development and Seco. There's also some conversations about sewer easements and other utilities that have to be coordinated between the two developments.
Drainage would be part of that as well.
Pardon me?
Drainage would be part of that coordination.
Yes,
sir.
Yeah, you're in better shape on this end of that end of Friendship than the other end of Friendship as far as drainage goes. I commend you. Okay, thank you. I think I'm okay with the R3 on the two tracks. I think the R2 is the R2 on the track closest to Friendship is appropriate, considering what the requirements that we put on the Seco development for their building height.
Building height as well as density. If you recall, Seco was in a planned unit development district, a PUD. So they chose the MU2 base zoning. As part of that base zoning, the density requirements are those equal to the R2. So if this were to be downzoned by council from R3 to R2, they would be more in line with what we see on Friendship Lane at this time.
How about park area there? We're not going to rely on kids having to go across Friendship Lane with all that traffic there to go to that park over there, are they?
No, as part of the Friendship Oaks subdivision, or formerly Heather Glen, they had a parkland dedication requirements. You can see some of this area. If you see on this map, there's some parkland dedication here. So all of that gets done as part of the plating. They're not asking for any special requests at this time outside of what was prior approved.
Kathy? Question?
Thank you calling on me.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. My concerns were similar to Tom's in terms of the amount of traffic and exiting ingress and egress off of Friendship Lane. So I don't know if you're going to have to require a traffic light there, which would be a big change for Friendship Lane. My other question is that and you may not know this now, but R3 does allow for a lot of uses, lots of different kinds of uses. Do you have any idea what their plans are for that at this point?
At this point, they're just, I don't think they have any plans. This is more of they're going to be marketing this out for sale. I don't think they'll be developing this at this point, unless the applicant knows more detail on that. I don't have any plan. I haven't seen any plans on the end product.
Would you introduce yourself, please? Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, staff. My name is Mark Sparrow. I represent HK Fredericksburg LLC, the owner of the two properties that are being discussed this evening. A couple things with respect to interest. Right now, we have a contract offer from a multifamily developer for the 15-acre tract, basically the 15-acre tract. And it was an unsolicited offer. Basically, it's my understanding that they would be looking at doing market rate apartments, not looking for any subsidized, state or federal help with respect to construction. Sorry. And then the other concern that I heard was over traffic. Currently, where we're at with staff is we've submitted our traffic impact study. It's been reviewed. We considered those two tracks in our traffic analysis as far as increasing the density in those from single-family detached to some type of attached. So those calculations have gone into our last study, and it's my understanding from staff that they didn't have any issues with those numbers. With respect to the improvements on Friendship Lane, what we're being requested or asked to do as with this development is a right turn decel lane going on the eastbound side of Friendship Lane. In addition, sometime in the future, when the traffic warrants, we would be asked to construct a left turn lane, a designated left turn lane, going on the westbound Friendship Lane. So those would be the two things. We have had and been in communication with SECO, the next door neighbor to our east. Basically, staff came back and asked both us and SECO to combine our projects and then present in both our transportation impact studies the both combined planned, and that's what we're being asked to do at this time.
So question for, looking at the map, the 10-acre tract and the 4.76 acre tract, those two tracts as R3, it would seem to me that is, who knows whether the traffic's going to dump on Friendship or it might dump on 87 South.
Yes, any TIS will make some assumptions on where they go and their daily trip generations.
And I mean, just looking at it, if that's where if the high density apartments are there first in the 10-acre tract, it's going to be a lot simpler for them to turn out and go 87 north to get into town than it is.
That's a general assumption at this time.
And also, Councilman Wilson, if I can add to that, in the contract that we received, that was one of the conditions that the buyer wanted, was to make sure that we had constructed the road along their boundary and then punched it out to 87. So that would be something that if we decide to move forward with that prospective buyer, that would be an obligation of ours to make sure that secondary access would be 87.
So would it be similar to your right and left turn design that you were just discussing for Friendship? Would that be similar on 87?
With the exception of doing a designated decel right turn lane going into the project it would be northbound 87.
Right.
We would have that obligation based on current traffic or based on future traffic counts to do a left turn lane and designate the left turn lane into the project.
Okay.
If you're heading southbound on 87.
So this would be similar, Jason, to, the Frieden subdivision as it comes out on, 87?
Yes, I'd have to review that TIS to see their exact similarities. I'm not familiar with theirs, but their movements, obviously this one may be a little higher given the density, so they may have some more mitigation that they have to do as part of that.
But it would be similar.
Yes.
When we zone something R3, and maybe we're not to that one yet.
We're not to that one just yet.
Okay, I can save that question.
Well, I mean, it is pertinent because you can't make that zoning change until you make the land use change. So if you think it's going to affect, then I'd be glad to answer that question as well.
Well, my question about R3 is, I mean, we haven't seen, or at least I haven't seen very much of that since my experience on the council. In reading the zoning ordinance, as I said, it allows for many different uses. Do you agree with that?
Yes, so staff is comfortable with the uses that are there prescribed by right. They're typical that you'll see what you see in R2, townhomes, duplexes, similar things. The R2 allows you to do the townhome, or it allows you to do single family. You can also do an R1A product as part of the R2. The R3, again, group residential, condominiums, townhouses, all those are allowed in R2. Would allow possible for churches, things of that nature, if they wanted to sell off a piece and decided they needed a church to serve all of those citizens, that's an option there. As far as the uses that take conditional use permits or CUPs, those are pretty standard as well for multifamily and very similar to the ones you find in R2. So daycare services, education facilities, things like that. Any of those uses would come back to P&Z and council, but staff doesn't have any major concerns on the R3 land uses.
And even including 3-story height.
Given their location backing up south of the commercial and west of the unzoned part, no, we don't have any concerns. That's why we did recommend the denial of the R3 that close to Friendship Lane, given what we did with the Seco project, limiting the height in those areas that were immediately adjacent to Friendship.
Thank you.
Any other questions? There being none. Any other motion is made, would it be appropriate to read that whole paragraph?
So, the applicant asked for one thing, P&Z recommended something, and then staff is proposing a third item. So, whatever motion is made, we need clarity on that issue of what portions of the land use change the council wants to approve and or approve with changes or deny. So it doesn't necessarily need to be by you don't have to read the whole paragraph. There's an ordinance that's written as the application was made. So if you wanted to approve it as it was applied for, you could just approve the ordinance as written. But if you want to make changes, and Jason, I can walk council through that as needed.
So item four would be the only one that we are proposing changes on the land use chart. So instead of low density residential to high density residential, we would be looking at medium density residential.
For the 5.986 acres.
Yes, sir.
And because planning and zoning recommended denial on that portion, it would require a supermajority of the council to approve that portion to anything above what P&Z recommended denial, not changing it at all. So any action council takes to change that would require a supermajority.
Can you tell us why P&Z denied that 5.986 acres?
Because they were following staff recommendation. Staff recommendation was for denial on that because of the concern of the R3. I did mention during the meeting they had the ability to go to a lower zone. I don't know if I didn't do a good enough job explaining that, and maybe that's why it wasn't chosen. So next time that issue comes up, I'll make sure that they're aware of that.
Okay, thanks. Nothing's sinister.
Stab at it. Okay, then I will make a motion that we approve the change in land use for the 10.143 acre tract from medium density residential to high density residential. The 4.76 acre tract from medium density residential to high density residential.
That would be low density on the.
Oh, the low density, excuse me, okay. That would be the LDR from R1A to high density residential. And then the 5.986 acre tract from low density residential to medium medium density residential. Oh, and then, excuse me, the 0.03 acres from medium density residential to low density residential.
0.3 acres.
0.3 acre tract.
Wait a second, reading.
Wait a second.
Yeah, and I'll waive the second reading. Bobby missed this one.
Okay, we have a motion by Tom. I think we got it correct.
Yeah.
Okay, do I hear a second?
A second?
Second by Kathy. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There is none. Do we need to do something about the other part?
Well, I will amend the ordinance 2021-14, which is land use ordinance. I'll amend that prior to execution to reflect the change the council just made. And now you need to take action on the zoning on the related property, which is the next item on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. And moving on to 8D, consider the approval of ordinance 2021-15, amending the zoning ordinance of the city and changing the zoning district as to a portion of the Fredericksburg Oak subdivisions located to the south of Friendship Lane and east of US 87 South, situated in the city of Fredericksburg, Texas. Changing said property from mixed residential R2 to single-family residential small lot R1A for approximately 0.3 acres, from mixed residential R2 to multifamily residential R3 for approximately 15.203 acres, and from single-family residential small lot R1A to multifamily residential R3 for approximately 5.986 acres, and providing for an effective Z110. First of two readings, council may waive the second reading. Jason?
So very similar presentation to the last one. In fact, given y'all's discussion on that, you could make a motion to approve items 1, 2, 3 as presented, with item 4 a change from R1A to R2 instead of R3, and that would find that out pretty easily for you.
I think I've got this one.
Any other additional questions on this one? There being none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I make a motion that we change the zoning from 0.3 acres that is currently R2 to R1A. Then the 5.986 acre change from R1A to R2 on a 4.76 acre R1A tract, proposed change to R3, and a 10.143 acre tract change from R2 to R3. And waive the second reading.
Jason, y'all are happy with all this. There's so many changing this to that and everything. P&Z and all you guys are on board with it and everything's fine.
Yeah, it took us a little while. We noticed our GIS maps weren't updated when we were doing our background check, so we made some corrections to that. So this request actually helped us improve our data a little bit on what we have out there. So we're okay with the changes, and we understand these type of changes are generally common when you're talking large developments of this nature.
And it's like the zoning map that's in our packet that's incorrect?
Correct.
Because it has the R1.
Yes.
That's not R1, it's really C1.5.
Yes, sir. And that was a major reason we recommended denial, because during our research, we were assuming that was R1. So after talking to the applicant, he made us aware of the change, so we found some old ordinances. So the image you see on my screen or what I showed has been updated, so we'll get that data set updated to the website so that when people look on our interactive map, that is accurate.
Before I ask for a second on that motion, did we get everything in it we needed?
Yes, sir. Good job. And I apologize for the lengthy legal description, so I was just
That's
testing
fine.
you.
Okay. I have a motion by Tom.
I waive the second.
Okay, a second.
I have a second by Jerry. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Moving on to 8C. Consider the ordinance 2021-16, amending Article 3, Historical Preservation, Chapter 23, Planning of the Code of Ordinances to modify the composition of the Historic Review Board, to modify the procedure for designation of the historical districts and landmarks to conform with state law, to incorporate and adopt and revise the historical design guidelines, standards, and related non-substantive amendments for clarity and providing for an effective date. First of two readings, council may waive the second reading. Hannah? Oh, there you are.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council. Coming to you tonight for adoption of the design guidelines and amendment to the Historic Preservation Ordinance. So historic preservation in Fredericksburg has been going on for 50 years. It started with the creation of the National Register Historic District in 1970, which I will say really predates me by a long time. So you guys have been at this for a long time and didn't need my help. And the local survey was created in '83. The existing historic district design guidelines were established and adopted in 1997. And then of interest, would be when you created the position for the Historic Preservation Officer in 2017. And since then, we expanded the Historic District and then started the process to create new design guidelines, actually in 2019 with the RFQ. And then the public process really kicked off in 2020. So this has been a public process since 2020. This hasn't just been staff, this has been a steering committee that consisted of members of the Historic Review Board, members of the Board of Realtors, local architects, representatives from the Chamber, the local Builders Association, Historic Society, and City of Fredericksburg. And it has been a very public process for the kickoff meeting in January 2019, and 2 drafts that have been released, several public meetings, open house, Zoom meetings, and several city council presentations throughout, and historic review board meetings. So this and then also online surveys. So it has been a very public process, and we've had a website dedicated to the design guidelines since the first meeting. So one of the main things is what's the difference between the 97 guidelines to the 2021 standards? First off, the biggest change is the use of the rating system. So in our ordinance, we describe properties as high, medium, and low. The 97 design guidelines never referenced that. And so This document is geared towards that, treating properties differently based on their rating. Another difference is that we include a few more architectural features that weren't included in the 97 design guidelines, including fencing, chimneys, and then lot development pattern. As we're seeing more and more of the short-term rental compounds, that's really changing the lot development. And the 97 guidelines had no way of foreseeing Airbnb and the changes it would cause in town. It also gives more direction for new construction and, again, the lot development patterns. And it also includes mid-century properties. In the 2018 survey, we looked back 50 years. That's the standard for historic preservation, is 50 years. And so from 2018, we look back to 1968. So the 97 guidelines didn't address mid-century properties or materials at all. So the document itself, it is 200 pages total, and it starts off with a purpose and scope, defining, what the design guidelines and standards are meant to do, and then there's a lengthy section on architectural character and styles. And if anybody calls or asks about their property, this is where I send them. Well, first off, let's understand the history and architectural style of your structure. And then section 3 is really the meat of the standards and the guidelines, and it's broken down into 3 smaller sections. So thinking about an existing historic property, making alterations to that property, and then additions to existing structures, and then infill or new construction on empty lots, or new construction on properties with existing structures. And then section 4 would be our bibliography, and then appendices, several appendices, including appropriate color swatches, again, based on the time period and design of the structure. Planning a project, people are thinking about a property that they own in a historic district. The process is not changing. Always start with the design guidelines. They are available. We will obviously have printed versions available, and then they'll be available online as well. And then reach out to staff early on and do their little research on the building and the history, the style of the structure. And all changes go on our certificate of appropriateness application. It's a one-page application. Those come to me, and then based on the request, decide if it goes to the Historic Review Board or if it's something I can approve administratively. And the majority of items are approved administratively. So again, the biggest difference in this document is the rating system, and so we are treating high-rated properties differently than medium and low. So while the word required or requirement is used maybe 200 times, it's usually associated with a high-rated property, or something like this where it's required if it's visible from the right-of-way for a medium-rated property, and then just a recommendation for a low-rated property. And the board, we do know there are exceptional projects that come from time to time, and so our city attorney had drafted some language to allow the Historic Review Board to give exceptions for design guidelines and exceptions to the standards where the spirit of the Secretary of the Interior standards can't be precisely met, but still gets the intent of the guidelines and standards. So we created that section. I will say, since the Historic Review Board met, they did meet on the 13th and voted unanimously for a recommendation for adoption. In the meantime, I had some reach out and let us know that we were using the word auxiliary in a way that I think we meant to use it as for accessory. So accessory is used in our zoning code, auxiliary is not. And in this document, there were 36 uses of the word auxiliary. So we have amended that language. Daniel updated that language just today. So if you're ready, we can get you to pass those out. Sorry. He's got the red line track version of that. So every place that we use auxiliary structure or building, we would replace that with accessory. Now we do define an accessory dwelling unit as something specific, a dwelling unit that somebody could live in. So when we say short-term rental compound, we're talking about multiple accessory dwelling units. But then also realizing there are other accessory uses such as carports and garages and sheds. And those are more of a utilitarian use. And then for the ordinance amendments, the major revisions in the ordinance is the structure of the Historic Review Board. Currently, there are 7 regular members and 3 alternates, and it becomes a nightmare when we have attendance issues and there's 8 people that attend and somebody has to recuse himself and who's voting and who's not. So we would ask just to become a regular 9-member board. And when you met last month, currently right now we have 1 vacancy, so we're at 9 members right now. So you would just wave your wand and they would all be regular voting members. And then we have a section to update the landmark designation process, and it's consistent with the state statute, HB 2496. And then this ordinance amendment would add the 2021 design guidelines and standards as an appendix to the ordinance. And that'd be referenced in section 23-62. And then it also clarifies that staff can approve non-historic age structures regardless of the rating on the property. So for example, if somebody had a tough shed from Lowe's and wanted to remove it, even if it was on a high-rated property, that staff could approve that administratively without taking that to the board. So that was just a point of clarity. So that's my presentation. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I do have one question about the number of members of the board, 9. Supposing one member is absent and you have the divided vote evenly, what do? Just pass? In other words, you can't call in an alternate to your 9-member board anymore.
It would seem to me to be the same issue that if we had a missing councilman and we had a vote and it was 2-2, then it would just be continued to maybe to the next meeting.
Right, you would need 3 of the 4 so if you've got an even number, it's in attendance and you had split vote, it wouldn't, whatever was proposed wouldn't pass, wouldn't carry.
Right.
So, the quorum would become 5 now for that group. So, at a minimum, they'd have to have 5 people there.
No, it's a real, I'm reaching with this hypothetical, but when people come before these boards that we have, P&Z, Historic Review, they're often on a time schedule, and to have to wait another month for an answer might be a little different than some of the issues we deal with here. So I assume you took that into consideration when you came up with the number and no alternates.
Yeah, I don't see the removal of the alternates as, because the way it was written is that it would only, it was overly complex, but basically, if you had less than 7, you would bring in alternates to hit a maximum of 7. But if you only had, say you only had, 6 people total there, you would just run the meeting with 6. And so I don't think that, if you had a split vote, a 3-3 vote, for example, it doesn't mean they couldn't do anything that evening. They just have to propose a new motion and keep going until they pass something that evening. Also, the Historic Preservation Ordinance for certificate of appropriateness actions, if they don't take any action within 60 days, it's deemed to be approved. So they've got to take some action. They're under some sort of time constraint already to prevent what you're talking about, projects just sitting eternally, in meetings. So that's just my opinion. I don't know that it would have much impact on the meetings moving their items forward.
Okay.
And we've run into issues in the past with the current setup is you could have everybody there, including the alternates, and the alternates can participate in the discussion, but they can't make motions and they can't vote. And occasionally somebody would be an alternate, in the heat of the moment, they may make a motion and everybody goes along with it. And then if that action's challenged, after that, we go back and look, and we've got a bad motion because it was made by somebody that shouldn't have been making the motion. So we're trying to eliminate that issue of confusion on the board action.
Great. Thank you.
Tom?
And on the approval of demolition of non-historic age structures, currently for a demolition permit anywhere in the city, do they have to come to you?
I do review all demolition permits in the city. So if, to kind of catch something that's outside the district that we didn't previously survey.
So I need to come to you to tear down a shed?
You would submit a building permit, a demo building permit, you would submit a photograph, and I would approve it. It wouldn't be held up, really. Yeah. Those are easy.
But to build a fence, I send it to Jason.
Fences go to the building department, correct?
It's not a historic fence.
And technically, you wouldn't get held up on your demo unless it was historic, then you would have to go to HRB.
Even if I'm not in the historic district?
That would depend on if we take that to HRB and determine that it is of historical significance and add it to the register.
Okay.
Jared?
Oh, I don't know. I was telling Anna today, I really liked the statement of purpose. It says, City of Fredericksburg hereby recognizes it is known for its unique stone architecture, historic sites, collection of German pioneer Sunday houses, Victorian-inspired homes, and thriving historic market plots and downtown area. And knowing a lot of the people on the steering committee, I feel real comfortable if they approve it and are comfortable with what's in the guidelines. I don't have a problem with accepting this document.
Yeah, a lot of time and effort was put into this, and lots of public input from all. And I know the document's not going to appease everyone on every subject, but I think it's a working document. And as time moves along, adjustments need to be made. I'm sure they'll take a look at it. So I'm in favor of it as well. So is there any further discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion. Oh, I'm sorry.
I just give a brief statement on some of the ordinance amendments, and Anna covered them. I'll just give a little more detail, particularly related to the design guidelines and standards. So previously there were design guidelines, and the way they were adopted in the ordinance was that council approved them once, but then the ordinance allowed sort of infinite modifications of them without future council action, which in my mind makes them kind of malleable and not, there's no certainty to that. And so through the process of reviewing and amending or updating the design guidelines, whatever you want to call the process, they I guess through public input and through input from HRB and from Historic Preservation Officer, they moved from being guidelines to guidelines and standards. Now, as part of this ordinance amendment, the now design guidelines and standards are being incorporated into the ordinance. They're being attached to the Code of Ordinances, so it'll be codified as an appendix. They'll be fixed in there so anybody can go look at it, and the only way they can be changed would be by future ordinance of the council. So the intent is, these are more, I guess you can call them, there's less latitude for the Historic Review Board in certain circumstances now because they're more of a fixed criteria. The benefit to that is that it gives certainty as to what that criteria is, and it won't be sort of a moving target or be changed, continually over time, at least without public notice and consideration by the Historic Review Board and by the council. Let me see if there's anything else in here. And then on the legislature has twice changed the law on the designation of historic districts and historic landmarks. We discussed this issue at length when the city expanded the historic district. So we've added a provision now in our ordinance to reflect that change in state law, which requires owner consent or supermajority of your HRB and council to designate property as either a district or a landmark. So we've incorporated that additional protection for the property owners into the ordinance as well. And then finally, and Anna touched on this in her presentation, but we've created some exceptions in the to the standards that can be, I don't want to call them variances, but they're a similar concept that the Historic Review Board, if they encounter an application where just, given unique circumstances of the property or ADA considerations, and there's a list of specific examples of when those exceptions could apply, but it will give the HRB some flexibility when they're faced with a standard that says you have to do this. They can make findings that say, despite that standard, we think it's appropriate to do something different because of the unique circumstances. So we put that into the standard. So even though they're standards and they're fixed, there's still room for modification or relief from those when appropriate. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate it. Okay, Mr. Motion Man.
Okay. Mayor Keeney, I move that we approve ordinance 2021-16, amending Article 3 of the Historic Preservation, Chapter 23, Planning of the Code of Ordinances, to modify the composition of the Historic Review Board, to modify the procedure for designation of historic districts and landmarks, to conform to state law, to incorporate and adopt revised historic design guidelines and standards and related non-substantive amendments for clarity and providing for an effective date, and waive the second reading.
Okay, I have a motion by Tom. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Kathy. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you, Anna, and everyone else that put all this together. Appreciate it.
Yeah, y'all did a great job.
Long road.
Moving on to 9A, consider the approval of a bid award of Boot Ranch Lift Station Rehabilitation Project to Arco Utilities LLC for the amount of $1,650,000. Oh, take it back, Chris.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Chris Canese, Engineering Department. The Boot Ranch Lift Station Rehabilitation Project was identified as a top priority in the 2016 wastewater master plan. As I discussed with you all a little bit earlier this evening as part of the CIP discussion, the lift station's original design and construction allows for corrosive gases like hydrogen sulfide to enter the valve and equipment area. This has resulted in the equipment, valves, piping, ventilation equipment, electrical equipment to corrode and be damaged over time. I've included some pictures in the council memo just to reference and show what that equipment currently looks like. In addition to the corrosion of the equipment, the lift station, the original design of the lift station requires the pumps to overcome an extremely high head condition and flow rate, causing some operational issues and creates a really operational challenge for our wastewater department staff. This project was designed by HDR and started in 2019. Last year with the pandemic, we put it on the shelf essentially to see how things were going to kind of happen and finances and so forth. But we got the project basically shovel ready. All we had to do was bid it out and move forward. So we started the bid in the middle of May. Advertised this project for bid for 3 weeks. After advertising, we received 3 bids on July 1st of this year. The bid tabulation is attached. Argo Utilities LLC submitted the low bid for $1,650,000, which was approximately 5% lower than the next high bid. City staff, along with HDR Engineering, our consultant, checked the references provided by the contractor. We got some really good feedback on previous projects that Argo Utilities has completed and is currently working on, similar size projects, that is. Based on this information and the attached letter that HDR provided, we are recommending the bid award to Argo Utilities for the amount of $1,650,000. I would like to mention that this project will take some time.
$650,000.
$1,650,000, excuse me. I will mention that this project will take some time to construct, so we've allocated some money as part of this fiscal year's budget, and we've allocated some money for next fiscal year budget, which we'll be discussing with council as part of our budget discussion on August the 4th. Be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I think we need to bring up too about what revenue the city gets back from Boot Ranch on the gray water. I think Kent had that.
Well, so the city does sell reclaimed water as well as provide the potable water and the sewer service to Boot Ranch.
But what revenue do we receive from Boot Ranch?
Approximately 600,000 a year, close to that. We have Kent sent us from Laura.
So Jerry, what I think you're referring to is we bill the Boot Ranch customers for water and sewer services. They're billed at twice the rate of in-city customers. So we do generate a lot of revenue from the customers out there. For the first 6 months of this year, our revenues exceeded our expenses by $291,000. So if you project that out for the rest of the year, we're going to generate about close to $600,000 in net revenues off Boot Ranch. And that's for the monthly billings to the customers.
Question, Kathy? Nope, Tom? Okay, thank you very much, appreciate it.
I make a motion that we approve the construction contract for the Boot Ranch lift station to Argo Utilities LLC for $1,650,000.
We have a motion by Jerry, second?
I'll second.
Have a second by Kathy. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. Okay, we did 9B, so let's go to the city manager report.
Okay, Mayor and Council, I have 3 items to report on this evening. We'll start with item 10A, which is our STR ordinance. First off, I think certainly the council and the public that is here tonight recognize that last Monday we had a real positive work session at the University Center. We had a good turnout of the public. We had a lot of good input. Everybody presented themselves very well during that meeting. So I don't know about you, Mayor and Council, but I was real pleased, and I think staff was real pleased with the amount of input and guidance we got at that meeting. We certainly got some good input from the council following the public input. So what is taking place now is staff is going through our notes from the meeting. We met last Thursday. Jason, Clinton, Daniel, and I met to review the council comments that you offered us last Monday night. And we're in the process of drafting changes to our ordinances that would track the guidance that the council provided as far as code enforcement issues and changes to our zoning ordinance. At this point, I don't know how long that process is going to take. We will get back together towards the end of this week on Friday, and then I can give the council a report after a meeting on Friday. But we're proceeding on with the changes to the ordinance. That will certainly take a while to go through a process there. I don't have a time frame yet. In the meantime, I also want to let you know we will be meeting with the members of the STR Alliance on Friday morning. Just got confirmation on that today, just to, again, hear some more comments from them, from their members. And so that's kind of where we are right now as far as the ordinance. Again, I think we're on the right track, and hopefully we'll have something for you to consider here in the next 30 to 60 days. So are there any questions that the council may have at this point, or any other comments on that topic? No, it's just an internal meeting where staff is going to, Daniel's starting to work on some of the ordinance, some of the drafts.
You're meeting with the Alliance.
We'll be meeting Friday morning.
This Friday?
Yes, sir.
Where at?
We haven't publicized it as a public meeting, but we could certainly have 2 council members there. I think the mayor wanted to come, didn't you, Mayor? So, yeah. Jerry, you want to join us too? It'll be at 8 o'clock. So,
well, there's something at fire training at 8:30. I get that.
Tell them I'll be there. So,
yeah, I don't mind being there.
Okay.
8 o'clock?
8 o'clock at City Hall.
Yeah.
I didn't get a chance to, 8 o'clock Friday, work for you? Okay. Okay, so moving on, we have,
Can I ask a question? You sent us, I think you sent us an email saying that you might need to have some more input from council on the ordinance.
land use and zoning. I think if you could stop by and maybe visit with Jason a little bit, and he can kind of give you a little background. A little bit confused with the guidance on zoning and land use. So if you could just, we had a chance to visit with Charlie last week. We just wanted an opportunity to visit with the other 4 council members. So if you could just stop by and visit with Jason next couple of days, one-on-one.
Okay.
Is this the issue of auxiliary buildings and?
No.
Accessory dwelling units and a couple other issues, just like to touch base.
I don't know if this is appropriate discussion. Thank you for shaking your head no, Daniel. Appreciate that.
Not for deliberation, for sure.
No, well, it's not for deliberation, but I was unclear because I got the email on the issues and I didn't understand what issues were being brought up or were unclear.
I know that I expressed some concern to the city manager and maybe Jason as well. So maybe if you want to reach out to the city manager, he can let you know. And I don't know, council may need to come back in public meeting and actually discuss that item further if we don't have enough clarity as it stands.
Okay. Any other questions on the STR ordinance? Okay, if not, the other major project we're working on right now, of course, is the annual budget. We had our first budget work session with the council last week. I thought we had a good start to our budget process with a focus on the general fund last week. And now we get a 2-week break from our budget meetings because we have some vacation scheduled the next couple of weeks. But we'll be back together on the week of August 2nd with the county commissioners. That'll be to discuss city-county services. And then we'll be back on August 4th back at the Cardinal Room to talk about enterprise funds, the budgets for the enterprise funds, including tourism fund and the fund for the America Rescue Plan funds. So August 2nd and August 4th will be our next 2 budget meetings, but I think we're off to a good start. Any questions or comments from the council regarding the city budget? Okay, the last item, the mayor asked me to give you an update on COVID today. And so I do have updated numbers from Justin that he sent me today, Justin Calhoun. And I don't want to go through all these numbers, but I wanted to kind of share with you because I think the council's aware and certainly the community is aware that there's an increasing concern with the spread of COVID taking place both nationally and within the state. And as you can see from these numbers, also locally. So if you will take one of these, and I'll just highlight some of the numbers that Justin shared with me today. First off, Gillespie County right now, we have 37 active cases of COVID. And you can see the surrounding counties include Kendall with 42 active cases, Llano County 36, and I wanted to note Kirk County was 55. And the reason I wanted to note that is because Kirk County actually has a case of the Delta variant. And so that was certainly a cause for concern that the hospital had expressed to us last week, members of the hospital staff, that the Delta variant is now in this area. And so it hasn't been reported in Gillespie County yet, but it has been reported in Kirk County. So that indicates an increase in local COVID-related cases. And then the next section talks about the hospitalization rate. Today, the hospital reported there was 3 cases of COVID at HCM. And you can see in our service area, which includes the San Antonio service area, the hospitalization rate has increased from 3.19% to 4.56%. So all numbers are increasing the last couple of weeks, both active cases, hospitalization, and again, the addition of the Delta variant in this area. So there's a lot of cause for concern from the medical professionals and others in our community. One of the things that would certainly help the spread of the virus is increased vaccinations. You can see, again, the numbers for vaccinations right now. We are standing at a total of 53% of the population here in the county that has received at least one dose, and 48% of the individuals 12 and over that have received both doses. The numbers, if you want to write down the numbers beside that, the total numbers of individuals here that have received one dose is 12,592, and both doses 11,226. So you can see we have increased our numbers of vaccinations, but we're still at around that 50% level for total vaccination rate. The one number that I think does look very positive, you can see there, is the 65 and over. We've had 77% of the county residents 65 and over that have received one dose, and 72% have been fully vaccinated. So that is the group that, of course, is most of concern, that we're now over 70% in that category. So I think that's something we want to note. We do have a number of opportunities for our local citizens to get vaccinated. We have all the local pharmacies are offering the vaccine. It is available both on an appointment basis and walk-in basis. That vaccine is free of charge. And today at Rotary Club, the Methodist Church reported that they will offer vaccinations this coming Saturday at the Methodist Church. That will be the J&J vaccine. So there's a lot of opportunities for the public who are not vaccinated to take advantage of vaccines over the next couple of weeks. That's what I wanted to report today, Mayor, but I'd be glad to answer any questions.
I have a question, Ken. Looking at the vaccination rate, the 12 and over, one dose 53%, I think it would help a great deal if we knew how many people were in each of those categories.
I don't think the state reports that, Tom, but I'll check on that, but I've never seen that.
I know, but I see Tim Lemberg in the back. I would think that maybe economic development could tell us how many people we have in the category of 65 and older in our community. I guess that would be what, Gillespie County? Is that demographic data that's available? Well,
somewhere in there.
I know, but I'm sure there's someplace where it's going to break down the demographics of it. So, I think it's great to know that we've got 48% of 12 and over fully vaccinated, but it would probably be even more effective to know how many people we're talking about.
Okay, that's the number I get.
Yeah.
The number for 12 and over fully vaccinated
is 48, but how many people are in that group?
Well, 11,226. Go ahead and have that inside. 11,226.
Okay.
And the 53% represents 12,592.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
okay.
Also, I wanted to note that testing is still being available through Catherine Coleman. If anybody in the community suspects that they may have COVID and they want to get tested, call City Hall and we can give them the contact information for Catherine. And all the information on local vaccination sites is available on the city's website. And of course, the newspaper published that information last week. So that's all I have, Mayor.
Yeah, and you know my feeling on this. 97% of the hospitalized with COVID were unvaccinated. And now that you got these different variances coming up to the COVID, viruses are always going to mutate. That's just what viruses do, they mutate. So the sooner we can get people vaccinated, when they want to get vaccinated, they can, it'll help out with shutting down some of this mutation on the viruses and help protect us. Whether you want to or not, that's up to you. Everybody has a right to wear a mask or not. I spent over a year wearing a dumb mask, and all of a sudden here I might have to go back to wearing a mask again. No, thank you. So get the shot.
Thank you, Jerry.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other comments? If not, we'll move on to items for a future agenda.
Okay, Mayor and Council, on page 121 of your packet is a very preliminary listing of the agenda items for the August 2nd meeting. We can certainly dispense with item 2 under ordinances and item 3, since the council passed the second reading on both the Friendship Oaks land use and zoning, and on historic district, you can cross that off the list. But you can see, as we discussed at our budget meeting last week, we'll have an amendment to the TABC alcoholic license ordinance. We will also have I believe, the Texas Rangers agreement to manage Fort Martin Scott. I think we're still working on that. And then I think we're going to have a request from Judy Borderbon to exchange city property on Friendship Lane between property she owns and property the city owns. And she met with the mayor and I last week, and the mayor's agreed to put that on the agenda for the next meeting. So that's items we have so far for the August 2nd meeting. Any questions or comments on that agenda?
Are we going to get some kind of an update or some information about the property exchange before the presentation?
Yes, sir. It'll be in your agenda packet. Yes, sir. We've got it all. We got maps. We got her letter. I think that's what we got. Were you looking for something we could show? What else would you like, Tom?
Well, no, I just, more so than 3 days before. I mean, is it ready now? I can talk to Charlie and see what.
Well, yeah, I can send, I actually have it ready. I just hate to start sending items out.
How about I just come by?
Yeah, come by, yeah. Okay, any other questions on August 2nd? Okay, August 16th, we've got a couple of conditional use permit requests that have come through the Planning and Zoning Commission. That'll be on your agenda for August 16th. We will have the discussion on a referendum on the pool splash pad, and that's what we have so far on August 16th. Any questions on that? Okay, Mayor, that's all I got.
Okay, council comments. I'm going to start to my right. Jerry?
No, okay. No, we met this morning with Market Plots, and we went through the fundraisers and the calls and what everybody's been doing and the foundation updates. Phase 1 of the playground renovation is pretty well complete. I think the second phase is we're gonna do some work on it when it's not raining. But what this deluge we had just really, I'm sure it knocked it back some. So anyway, so we're waiting for them to finish phase 2, and then we can get that pad, and hopefully we can get it in before the end of August. Jim was here. He didn't say anything about Steven Itz's retirement. That guy's done so much for the city. It's unbelievable. We, as far as our grants, that $250,000 matching grant, we've raised right at, I think we figured it up like 37% of it. But we have a lot of calls out there and that are still kind of pending. A lot of these corporations or companies, their budget process doesn't start till July and August too, so we're waiting to see what these people come through with. But we got a lot of feelers out there with some of the Atmos Gas, LCRA, just numerous people. So, and that was about all I have to say then.
Thanks, Jerry. Tom?
Nothing tonight.
Kathy?
I just want to make it clear that the SDR internal office meeting that you're having is doesn't represent the council in any way.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
It does.
Well, I just wanted to make clear that the STR meeting you're having with the STR Alliance, that's an internal office meeting. That's not a city council meeting.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Excuse, one more. You got a second?
Time's up.
I have some more market.
No. Go ahead.
Marketplace redevelopment, pledge cards, and if anybody's interested in what we're doing over there, I have more of them out here. I'll say it every time. We have diagrams of what we're trying to put on the square there. So if anybody's interested in like a pledge card, we can do like a 3-year pledge, and a lot of people have done that, but we'd love to have everybody pick up a packet. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry.
Kent, one last thing. Did the meeting that you're having on Friday, will you send out a memo to council on what transpired at the meeting?
Well, definitely. I'll provide you a detailed report after that meeting. And I wanted to clarify, we're not there to debate or negotiate anything with the alliance. We would not do that without the full council and presence. But we're just there to listen. They had some additional information to share with us, and we will give the council a detailed report following that meeting.
Thank you. Only comment I want to make tonight is if y'all haven't, or anyone hasn't been to the live Fredericksburg Theater productions, I encourage y'all to go. The production, The Beauty and the Beast, was fabulous by the youth of our community. I want to point out Daniel Jones's daughter was in it, and she was one, and they were 3 little ones that were just fabulous. And if I had they stole the show. Not that any of the other characters didn't do a fabulous job, but they really stole the show. Take time out, pick one of their shows, and I guarantee you're going to be very, very happy that you did attend one of those productions. I also want to compliment Catherine Coleman, my 2 granddaughters and their family were walking on Main Street. They saw the fire trucks. Catherine saw them. She did not know who they were. She was gracious and kind and invited them to come in, look at the fire trucks, and my 2 granddaughters were ecstatic. That's what makes Fredericksburg a community, a great community to live in. Thank you, Catherine Coleman, and I know she would have done it for anyone else that was walking by. So thank you again. That's all. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
Have a motion by Jerry.
Second.
Second by Tom. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.